recording right now. And then as usual, we'll post on our YouTube channel and put that on the PD Active website after the event. In addition, we'll also have the presentations available, and we'll send them if you registered for the event. We'll send the presentations out, and as well a list of resources. I expect other people during the meeting today will be sharing resources. If you drop those in the chat, we'll be sure to incorporate them into our resource list that we'll distribute at the end. And if you have not had a chance to make a donation of $10 for this roundtable, please do so when you're at your convenience. Todd will drop that link in the chat as well. And now I want to turn our attention to some of our panelists. Give me 1 second. I'm not sure if Janet is on with us yet. Is Janet on? Todd, do you know if Janet is here?
We're having a hard time getting Janet connected, so I will continue to work on that behind the scenes if you want to start off with Veronica.
Okay, well, I can go ahead and introduce everybody.
Sure.
But I just wanted to check in and see if we've had any response from Janet yet. Okay, so I'll go ahead and introduce Janet. She'll be joining us shortly. Janet Thompson is joining us today. Some of you might recognize her from a previous forum. She participated a few years ago on a forum where she talked about end-of-life care. She's a big advocate of compassionate care and is very active in the community. She currently works as a senior sales counselor at St. Paul's Towers in Oakland. She has been in the elder living housing sales field for many years, and she often speaks with elders and their families about their advanced care plans. She believes strongly that advanced care planning is an important part of one's personal health responsibility. And today she'll be primarily focusing on describing the range of licensed care community options. So that's independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled care. And as soon as Janet logs in, we'll have her give everybody a wave. I'm also happy to welcome Veronica Sibley. Veronica, do you want to wave? Okay. And by the way, if you have, depending on what setting you have, if you're in gallery setting, you should be able to see probably 20 people on your screen. You can also set it to speaker view, and that way you just see the person that's speaking in that moment. So there's definitely 2 ways to go about setting up your screen. Okay, so Veronica Sibley, thank you for joining us. She's joining us from Senior Alternatives, where she's currently the Director of Marketing. She brings over 20 years of experience in the senior living industry. She has a vast network of contacts in the senior healthcare industry, and she's going to be here today to talk about in-care home options, geriatric care management, and walk us through how to obtain really essential in-home care services. And lastly, I'd like to welcome Janelle Reinelt. She's a PD Active member and care partner. Janelle, give everybody a wave. Some of you may know Janelle from the community. She's been in our PD Active community for a long time. She was also participated in our last forum with the speech language pathologists. So thank you again for Janelle. Janelle is a former professor of performance theory, and her caretaking journey with Jerry, her husband, has included independent living, senior residential living, and for Jerry, board and care, assisted living, and memory care for the past 5 years. So again, we're going to have each speaker talk for about 20 minutes. And then at the end, we'll go through a Q&A session. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. All right. So I think what we're going to do is go ahead and start with you, Veronica. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So Veronica, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. And tell me as you're able to see it.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Perfect. All right. Very good. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here and share with you about home care options. And thank you for that nice introduction that tells you a little bit about myself. So yes, I've had quite a bit of experience in the senior living industry, and that is what I bring to the table today. In this case, we're going to talk about home care options. So I will go ahead and get us started, and we'll go from there. So First and foremost is there are different categories of what you can do when you are at home, and that is usually the first line of defense for folks to be able to stay in your comfortable setting of your own home and bring some help that is available out there. So there are quite a few agencies geographically that would serve this purpose of home care, home health, hospice, and palliative care. And I added senior rights because this is something that is available to folks when they are at home. When you live in a community, of course, you would have the use of a bus or whatever transportation a community has. But when you're at home, maybe that's something that's limited. So I thought I would put that in as well as part of the options as to what is available. So these are the 4 categories as to what I will be speaking on today. And we will get right into it. See here.
Veronica,
First,
I just wanted to let you know, I did put up a quick poll for folks to answer just so we can get a sense of what everyone's relationship with Parkinson's is for your information.
okay, great. All right, excellent. Thank you. So we'll start with home care. So again, this is one of the first things that people are able to do and makes it easy to bring some help at home. And so what does home care mean? So here, what you see listed is all of the different categories of the type of assistance that's available from home care agencies. So it could be as simple as just companionship. Have someone come in and spend some time with a client and, spend a few hours. Typically, the minimum for home care is 4-hour shifts. So it would be 4 hours a day, maybe 4 hours a week. That's typically the standard minimum for home care. So it could mean assistance with personal care, such as help with bathing or help with maybe, getting in and out of a car, getting in and out of the home, or just any assistance with personal care. So that would be available. So that's more hands-on assistance. Now, there are some agencies out there that have limitations as to lifting. So maybe some caregivers are not able to help someone as far as lifting. And so you have to ask about that. So that would be a good question to ask if there's any limitations about the actual lifting aspect, helping someone from the bathroom, from the toilet, or, again, getting in and out of the shower and so forth. Then it's like cooking and housekeeping. So this is something that maybe as you are limited, you're not able to do as well. So this is part of what home care agencies do, as well as medication reminders. So in home care, you're not able to handle medications, but you can remind folks about taking medications. Then there's transportation to appointments. So most agencies will ensure that the caregivers that are working for them are fully licensed, that they have a good driving record, and that they are able to have a good sized vehicle or the right vehicle to be able to transport a client from home to an appointment, or maybe it could just be to the park, or it could be to the beach, like you see this picture in here. I loved finding this picture when I was looking for an example, because this is something that one of our caregivers did for one of their clients when the person just wanted to go to the beach. And, it's not easy sometimes to get to the beach. So this person made it happen. And you see, she brought the chair, right, to go to the beach. And so this is just an outing of something that the client wanted. And sure, why not? We were able to do it. So that's just an example of something that happens. Of course, in home care, these would be non-skilled caregivers. In the case of our agency, we ensure that caregivers are fully vetted, that they're vaccinated, that they're licensed with the state, and that when they come work for us, they already have had some past previous experience in caregiving, whether it was at someone's home or whether it was working for a community or another agency. So we just want to make sure that people are fully vetted before we send them out. So of course we do training as well. So even though someone's been trained in the past, we want to ensure that we train them on our way and our our history, our way of doing business, our way of doing caregiving, and then also ensuring that people are going to be empathetic and caring, and that it is the right person that comes on board to be part of our group of caregivers. Just recently, I had the opportunity to take a look at tenure, and I asked my executive director as to how many people had been part of our team. And she said, there's about 20 people that have been with us 7+ years. So it's something that is very key that you want to find out when you're looking at agencies out there, is tenure of how long caregivers have been part of an agency. Typically, for home care, there are hourly rates. These are going to vary anywhere from about $35 per hour to about $50 per hour. And that can change according to the shifts. So let's say, for instance, you want a 4-hour shift, maybe your hourly rate is going to be a little bit higher than if you have someone come in 4 times a week for 5 hours each time, then you may get a different rate. So that varies by agency. Some agencies just charge per hour. It doesn't matter when it is that you're going to need the care. Some agencies will have a Monday through Friday rate, or a Saturday, Sunday will be a different rate. 24-hour live-in rate can also vary, and there's a discount for a 24-hour live-in rate. And speaking of 24 hours, typically what happens with a 24-hour type situation is that there's going to be 2 caregivers. One will do a 12-hour shift, and another person will do a second 12-hour shift. So typically you have 2 individuals that are doing that. So later we can talk some pros and cons on that situation. But typically home care is covered by long-term care insurance. So first, we would conduct an assessment. We match that person with the right caregiver. We start the care plan, and this is done, in our case, is done by master's level geriatric care managers that are the people that put together the assessment and that will match that person with, the right care plan. And then we would take a $500 deposit that gets applied to subsequent visits. So then once you run out of that 500, then you're going to be billed for the hours. If you have long-term care insurance, we work with long-term care insurance, and most agencies out there do. And so this is something that is covered by a long-term care insurance policy, which is great. Now let's talk about care management. Some agencies out there offer only home care and caregivers. Others are a combination of both, such as senior alternatives. We do care management as well. So what does care management mean? So this is basically when one of our master's level geriatric care managers is acting like a fiduciary for someone, or maybe like a daughter. It's just simply a way of supporting an individual that may not have the support that they need. So in our case, we would conduct an assessment, put together a care plan. There's a situation where we can be medical liaisons and advocate for an individual. We do medication management, and I see a typo there. I missed a T. I apologize for that. So medication management is something that we actually can do when we're in this role. There's coordination of care and services. And I'll give you an example of how this works. We have an individual who is a developmentally challenged individual who's about 67 years old, who's part of our care management roster of clients. So this is a person that they can't really function well out in the world. He was taken care of by his mother, and then when his mother passed away, she had written in the will that she wanted our agency to take care of him. So we took over, and we did. So this is an individual that he may look at the refrigerator, not know when to order things, not know, how to go about going to the grocery store. So we either take him to the store or we order online. The other day, he gave us a call at the office and said, I really would like to paint. So he talked to his care manager on the phone, talked about the idea that he wanted to start painting. So she said, okay, would you like watercolor, or, what kind of things would you like to do as far as painting? Tell me. So then she ordered everything on Amazon. It arrived at his place, And then he was able to start doing what he wanted to do. So, it may seem like a small thing, but it was a great deal for him. It was excellent that we were able to, to do that. So that's something about coordination. But then we also take him to his doctor's appointments and his podiatrist appointments, and to get his shots and so forth. So we coordinate all those services for him. We offer long distance family support. This takes place often when, say, for instance, a person has been moved to an assisted living community, but family still lives far away. And then there's, situations and things that happen in a community, then we're able to step in and help. We also, do support with long-term care. So that's, again, that planning that comes into place. And there's an hourly rate for this type service. In our case, for our agency, it would be $155 per hour for care management fees. There is a 45-minute free consultation that takes place initially to, find out if we're going to work with an individual or not, or just to give advice. So that is available to you. Now we get into home health. So most folks out there are not sure what the difference is between home care and home health. So it's simply that home care is non-skilled caregivers. Home health is for skilled personnel that would come into someone's home. So here, as you can see, we do, or not we actually, my agency does not do home health, but there are many agencies out there that do this. They would do IV therapy, wound care, post-stroke rehabilitation, medication management, healthcare treatments that are offered typically in hospitals. So this is done by skilled individuals such as nurses, physical therapists, occupational therapists, and so forth. And this is covered by Medicare. Now we get into hospice and palliative care. So most folks feel that hospice would be used at end of life, but not necessarily. It just has to be ordered by a physician. And what hospice means is comfort care at home. That home can be someone's home, or it can be a senior living community or a different community. So the term home is referred to as to where someone lives, but hospice can come into any environment where there is an individual that needs this type of care. So there's more frequent check-ins by the team that works with the folks that are on hospice. There will be medication monitoring, family support, which is really key in this case. I remember when my former father-in-law had cancer and he was staying at home, hospice came into play, and my former mother-in-law, she was so thankful. She called the people that work with them angels, because they were so kind to her. They were so wonderful. And they were able to just sit in the living room with her and chat as to what was going on at the different stages of that event. And so that family support is really key. And there's some great hospice companies out there that provide great support for families. And so medical equipment delivery, so they can help with all of that piece of the puzzle, which is what to bring into the home as far as hospital beds or any other kind of equipment that is needed. So they help with that implementation. And then comfort care kits. Sometimes there may be more than one person in a family at home. And so they also care for those folks too, not just for the person that is getting the hospice. And then these would be a team of both skilled and non-skilled workers. There's many volunteers that come in to, sit and watch someone, but then there's nurses that come in and look at the medication aspect of it. So it would be a team. And often our home care agency also helps with this type of setup. So it does become a team that works with someone when hospice is coming into play. And again, these orders have to be made by a physician. So the physician is the person that would recommend a hospice or palliative agency. So again, what are the differences between the two? Because we hear the term hospice, but then we hear the term palliative care. So here we are. Hospice is for end of life care. So this is care, comfort, help with the quality of life for however many days or months this individual would need. And this is a serious illness that is approaching the end of life. So that's when hospice comes into play. And so that's what hospice means. It's when someone has chosen not to undergo certain treatments, and it's designed for the individual. So again, there's a care plan that comes into play by the hospice agency. And now the difference is with palliative care, that is specialized medical care for people living with a serious illness. So this could be cancer, could be heart failure, Parkinson's. Treatment intended to cure that serious illness. So people are undergoing a certain kind of treatment. And so that is the difference versus someone who on the hospice side is looking at approaching end of life. And then the palliative care plan is meant to enhance a person's current care by focusing on quality of life for them and their family. This is also typically covered by Medicare. I added senior rights or just rights per se to this presentation because this is something that recently there have been more organizations putting this service out there. It used to be that when I first got started in senior living, there was no one offering rights to folks. But now there are, 3 or 4 or 5 different agencies out there that offer rights, which means that the cost is now a little bit less than it used to be back a few years ago. So what does this mean? This means that maybe if you have an inability to get in the car and drive yourself, you can always call someone who specializes in this type of service. So it could be rights to shopping or to doctor's appointments. This increases access and mobility for seniors or other individuals. Sometimes there's volunteer organizations that can help with this, and you can call and it doesn't cost anything in this case. There are some for-profit organizations. So here you can look at a minimum of about $20 per ride to $30 or $40 a ride, depending on the distance. But it's very different than calling Lyft or Uber because these are folks that are specializing in handling you with care. So again, rates may vary according to geographical area. There's flexible hours. And so Silver Ride is one company that comes into play here in the San Francisco area, but there are others in, the Alameda area, Contra Costa County. And so that is just a simple search on Google that can help you find this kind of a service. So let me tell you a little bit about our organization. So Senior Alternatives has been around for about 27 years. Our founder, Janet Brush, she's our managing partner as well. She is just extremely accomplished individual. Janet has a master's in social work, a master's in science and gerontology. She is a licensed clinical social worker in the state of California. She has a bachelor's of science in business administration and has been in the field of gerontology for many years. She's worked with a variety of issues such as dementia, depression, caregiving, and issues associated with the aging process. So Janet started this agency 27 years ago, and she wanted to have a geriatric team that was made up of people that had master's degrees and were experts in the field. And these are the folks that do a psychosocial assessment with our clients and put together care plans, matching the individual with the right caregiver. So I know that sometimes this is in people's minds as to, how does this work? How do we do it? How do we bring a stranger into our home? What if we don't like this person? What if we work with them for a while and then we feel like, okay, we have to, deal with this person even though we don't like them? I think it all begins with the right assessment, and it begins with the right match. If we know quite a bit about our clients, which is what we do with that process of the assessment, then we're able to know background, likes, dislikes, preferences. We're able to know a lot about this individual in order to match them with one of our caregiving team people and know that this is going to be a good match. If for some reason it is not a good match, then we do have a roster of about 100+ individuals that work for us. So we know that within that realm, we're going to find a good match, and we're able to make that change if necessary. We want our clients to be happy. We want them to be satisfied. And so, it definitely is part of the process. If we start off with knowing the individual, knowing their preferences, then we can match them with that great person. And for some reason, sometimes, chemistry is not great. Maybe, things may not work out, or sometimes the client decides to fire the caregiver, which happens quite a bit sometimes with memory loss or what have you. So it's quite all right. We deal with that all the time, and it's fine. And then we just send a different caregiver that maybe is another match for this individual to work with someone. So Anna Limon is our Director of Care Management. Anna has a Master's of Public Health from Columbia University. Most recent experiences are working as a medical social worker for a health plan called Brown & Tolden in San Francisco. She also has a master's in social work. So she leads the team of our care managers. So these are, again, the folks that would be advocates for people. These are the folks that get hired, to be that fiduciary at times with our clients. So she leads our team. And she is proficient in Spanish and French. So that's another thing too that we look for in our caregivers, and part of our care team members is to ensure that there's more than one language that's spoken within our teams, and that helps tremendously for folks that we care for. And Tanya is our executive director, so she ensures that everyone in our team is supported. And our office is in Oakland, California, but we work in Alameda County and Contra Costa counties. And so here's some of our contact information. We, again, offer home care and care management. We are in Oakland. We have an 888 number that's available 24/7. So people can call at 8 p.m. if they have questions, and someone will be able to answer. And if we can't answer some of those questions, we'll have someone get back to you the next day. So I encourage you to take a look at our website. It's www.bayareaseniorcare.com. That is bayareaseniorcare.com. We have a great blog with a lot of great information that you can take a look at. And I'll open up for questions if you have some.
Thank you, Veronica. That was really helpful. I, for one, found it really helpful to hear the difference between home health and home care. I'd always wondered about that. So thank you for your explanation about that.
My pleasure.
Todd did drop in the chat the name of the ride service that she mentioned for anybody interested, Silver Ride. Perhaps if you have any other recommendations, you could share them and I can provide them on the resource page, Veronica, that we can distribute at the end. So that was great.
Will do.
We did have one question that came in relevant to your talk. Which had to do with whether you need a physician's order for home health. Is that something you need a recommendation for in order to have it paid by Medicare?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
For home care, you don't. For home care, you can just call an agency anytime. And usually for home care, the recommendation comes from individuals that are around you, such as your physician, financial planner, an attorney, maybe someone in a community. So there's other professionals out there that have great connections with home health agencies. So that's how you could find a good agency. But for home health agencies, it does usually come from a physician.
Okay. And does Medicare usually cover the full cost of these services?
They usually do, yes. Now it's limited. It's not going to be for an extended period of time. It may be for, just a short period of time due to maybe an illness or an occurrence. And then, so there's limited visits.
Okay, great. Okay. So maybe we'll go ahead and move on then to Janet.
Okay.
And then
thank you for letting me share. It's been a pleasure. And I will go ahead and stop share here and get back to you.
And then we'll see you at the Q&A at the end.
Okay, great.
Okay, so now we're going to turn our attention to Janet. I introduced Janet earlier. Janet, are you here with us? Can you give a wave or say hello?
There we go. Hello.
Oh, there she is. Hello.
Sorry, things are moving around on my computer. It's a technologically challenged day.
No worries. If you would like to go ahead and share the screen, you can pull up your slides.
Great. Let me do
And
that.
then we'll have you walk through.
Okay, hold on. Go away.
I introduced you earlier, but just to remind everybody, Janet's going to be specifically talking about care facilities. So independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, those kinds of things.
Let me find the darn thing. Here we go. Oops.
Hmm.
So sorry. Hold on. Let me got too much open here. Hold on.
No problem. While you're doing that, I'll go ahead and ask Veronica another question. Somebody asked if you serves the Sacramento area, or if you have an organization, a sister organization in the Sacramento area that you might recommend.
Yes, Senior Alternative does not service that area, but I have an agency that I can recommend, and I will find that info and put on that chat.
Okay, super. Thank you so much.
All right. So can you see this now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yay. I love it when things work. So thank you so much for letting me go second. Veronica and I have known each other for about 23 years. And she's one of the smartest people that I know in our industry. And also Janet Brush, who started Senior Alternatives, is one of the smartest people I know in this industry. So I'm really pleased to be on the same platform as you. So thank you so much. So I've been in the senior housing industry for 23 years. I have worked at Aegis Moraga, which is assisted living and memory care. I worked at Lakeside Park, which is all memory care. Great stories there. I worked at Mercy Retirement and Care Center, which is assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing for about 11 years. And now I'm at St. Paul's Towers, which is over by Whole Foods or Children's Fairyland, whichever is your frame of reference, here in Oakland. And St. Paul's Towers is what we call a life plan, or CCRC. Our whole industry is all sorts of alphabets. And a continuing care community means that you come in and that you are there throughout your lifetime. So a life plan community such as St. Paul's Towers, Piedmont Gardens, Viamonte in Walnut Creek, Stone Ridge out in Pleasanton, you enter and then have a full lifetime of care with assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing all on the same campus. Or in Viamonte's case, they have a relationship with the skilled nursing. So I'm going to talk about the whole continuum of care from independent through skilled nursing, and in particular, how it pertains to folks with a chronic illness or condition such as Parkinson's. So I know that Veronica touched a little bit on this, but I do want to do a little bit of framework. Activities of daily living, ADLs. A lot of these are things that you are handling at home, right? You take care of going to the restroom, you take care of your shaving and makeup and hair, that's grooming. You take care of getting dressed. So all of these ADLs are things that if you move into community, that would be provided or help you with these activities of daily living, and they impact the price. So I wanted to just look at this list of ADLs. So there's dressing, bathing, grooming, continence, dining or eating, mobility, and then medication management. The continuum of care for housing or care options, independent living is at one end, and the opposite end where it's the most care is skilled nursing. So independent living can be anything at your home. Assisted living would be communities such as in our area, Merrill Gardens or Sunrise. Many of them have a memory care program. There are some standalone memory care programs like Lakeside Park. the Berkshire up in Berkeley is now all memory care. And then skilled nursing, some people go to skilled nursing for rehab. So that would be for our Kaiser members, that would be KPAC down in San Leandro. It would be, there's Piedmont Gardens has skilled nursing, St. Paul's Towers has skilled nursing. There are standalone skilled nursings like Elmwood. Trying to think of some right off the top of the bat. So skilled nursing, people can live there. We'll talk more about why does someone live in skilled nursing permanently. Payment sources for housing options from independent to skilled nursing are based primarily private pay. If you have long-term care insurance, then long-term care insurance might pay for all or some. You have to look at there's a one-page summary sheet for your long-term care insurance and take a look at that. It usually has an elimination period, like you need to have 90 days or so before we will now reimburse you. Long-term care insurance can provide funds to reimburse you for care at home, for durable medical equipment like walkers, wheelchairs, trapeze, bars, in-home care. So some of the services through senior alternatives or other sources can be reimbursed. Medicare, this is a lot of people ask if Medicare pays for assisted living, and it does not. In California, it does not. Medicare is medical insurance. So it provides reimbursement or partial pay for medical issues, going to the doctor, prescriptions, skilled nursing for rehab, not skilled nursing for long-term living. And Medi-Cal, in other states, it's called Medicaid. Medi-Cal, you can live in skilled nursing and be a Medi-Cal. It's difficult to find a bed once you are Medi-Cal because they fill up very quickly. So Medi-Cal is for folks that are without funds, but it only pays if you live in skilled nursing. And to live in skilled nursing, you have to have that need, right? You just can't say, oh, I've had a heartbreak of phone calls where people say, well, my mom only has Medi-Cal, so can she live in your skilled nursing? It's like, well, what medical needs does she have? None. She just doesn't have any money. And that's a very difficult predicament. So basically, private pay is what we'd be looking at. Licensing. So there are several layers of licensing for senior housing options. Non-licensed, your home can be an assisted living for you or your family member, or you can bring someone in, but that would be non-licensed. With a non-licensed or at home, you can do anything there, right? You can do IVs, you can do feeding tubes. So if it's a non-licensed, it's kind of whatever the care needs can be done. But once you enter into a community, whether it is a large life plan community, assisted living, what we call small assisted living or board and care, so those would be small group home types of things, they are licensed by the Department of Social Services. So they are a social model. So Department of Social Services, or skilled nursing is licensed by the Department of Public Health. And for communities that have assisted living and skilled nursing, well, now you've got two agencies that are watching over you. This is important because per licensing, some communities can and also cannot provide certain ADL services. Hang on to that. We will get to more specifics. Well, actually, let's just do that right now. So in an assisted living, a resident at the minimum must be able to help with their transfer, say from bed to wheelchair. Some assisted livings will use a Hoyer lift. Some assisted livings say, nope, it has to be a one-person transfer. And that's where our line is. So if you need more care than that, then they would move you along to a higher level of care or skilled nursing. So those activities of daily living from here impact where and for how long you can live in some communities. Does that make sense? Good. We will press on then. So independent living covers your home, which would be not licensed. Care limitations. Well, you can learn how to do tube feeding. You can have home health come in and change IVs. So are there care limitations? That's a good question. Something for you to think about. The cost is financial, particularly if you have home health coming in, if you have a caregiver coming in that provides that non-medical. Yeah. And there's also the emotional cost, because, you know, as much as you love your spouse and your partner, everybody says, oh, take care of yourself, take care of yourself. I was just speaking with one of my residents yesterday, and she said, but I can give him a shower. I can do this. I can do this. It's like, you can, but the cost is emotional to you. So knowing where your boundaries are, right, is self-care. And so then look at having that kind of help come into your home. Looking at a community, now we start talking about dollars and cents and what can be done. So communities, independent communities, are licensed. For instance, St. Paul's Towers, we are licensed by the Department of Social Services, because all of our apartments, whether they're independent or assisted living, are licensed for assisted living. So we can provide personal care services, those ADLs, in independent living. But we also have assisted living and memory care. And then because we have skilled nursing, well, now we have the Department of Public Health. So during COVID, it was really confusing because everybody had different layers of coverages and testing. And so we had to go with the highest level. So communities are licensed. Independent living would be St. Paul's Towers, Piedmont Gardens in our area, Cardinal Point. And they are truly independent with other levels of care. Care limitations, if someone is unable to transfer, then they might be assisted living appropriate. So in an independent living community, do they move to assisted living? If they need to be able to have a caregiver come quickly, that really indicates that they are no longer appropriate for independent living, but could move to assisted living. The cost, I know I feel your eyebrows going up just right now. So in independent living in a life plan community like Piedmont Gardens, St. Paul's Towers, Viamonte, Stone Ridge, there's an entry fee. And this guarantees you the opportunity to live there throughout your lifetime, right? So from independent living to skilled nursing to your heavenly discharge, if you will. Monthly fees can be between $8,000 and $12,000 a month. And in independent living communities, it really is because of the size of the apartment. There are different contract options, different refund options. So these are all questions that you would talk about and discuss as you tour these different communities. So this is an investment, but for the independent life plan communities, again, the value is that you are now having a lifetime of care without having to leave the community.
Say, Janet, can I interrupt with a real quick question?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Thanks, Todd.
We do see some questions and chatter about licensing. So if you bounce back to that previous slide, I'll throw a question out and then we can field some other ones when we get to Q&A. But
yeah,
I'm a little bit confused about how, if you can back up one slide, are you able to do that?
Yeah. Oops, hold on, I got the chat going.
You said that in-home care that is of the unlicensed variety can do a handful of things that it sounds like should be licensed, like IV setup.
So if you're at home, you know, it's everything goes, right? Because you're not licensed. So you can do anything you want to at home or are able to do. If you're in a
You who? You this partner or?
Yeah, you, the partner, you, the person that needs care. If you're in a home setting, right? If you're at home, there's no licensing. That's because you're just at home.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I'm probably not answering that well.
Well, so this home scenario has to do with just the person with Parkinson's living at home with their spouse or
Yeah.
their, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
not a professionally trained or licensed in professional that comes into the home to help.
Correct. Or you can have care coming in if it's a home health person, a home health caregiver, then they are a licensed nurse, as Veronica was saying. They would be licensed to do things like IV care. If it's just a caregiver and a non-licensed caregiver, they can help with showers, they can help with any of those other ADLs.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, it kind of looks at what does that care need? And if you're at home, a lot of people, are trained to do diabetes injections, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I think I'm not being very clear, but we can hash this out as well. So actually someone in the chat says here really well is like, yeah, we can privately hire people, and because you're at home, you can do really what you want to do. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Oh, let's move along here. Okay, come on. There we go. All right. So assisted living, most assisted livings also have a unit for memory care. And the reason they have a unit for memory care is because people would kind of code in and out. We want to know where our folks with memory care, if they're wandering about the building, right? So you can press on the door and it will open with a bit of an alarm so that we can sort of redirect some of our wanderers. Assisted living is a licensed kind of community. It's licensed by the Department of Social Services. There are care limitations because of licensing. And also sometimes it is because of staffing. Staffing levels, like how many do we have? And what is the staff capabilities? So for activities of daily living and personal care in assisted livings, their caregivers generally cannot do injections. They can help monitor blood testing for diabetes. If they have an RN on staff and someone is an insulin dependent diabetic, during the hours that their nurse is on staff, they would be able to give the insulin injection, but they don't always have an RN on staff 24 hours. So sometimes that diabetic care for someone who needs insulin injections, there's a gap. And so sometimes assisted livings are not able to have a insulin diabetic live with them because they don't have the RN who can give an injection on staff all of those hours that someone would need. Does that make sense? Okay. So licensing care limitations. Some folks in assisted livings would be, it would be a mobility issue. So can we, oh, that's a good question, Eileen. I will roll back to that. Some folks, if you are unable to bear weight, to be helped to transfer, say, like bed to wheelchair or wheelchair to the toilet with more than one. So if they can do it with one caregiver, that's usually good. If you need two caregivers, that's where things start to get a little rocky in assisted living, because now they have to have two caregivers where they might be, split up. You do these people, you do these people. But if we have to have two people taking care of one, that's where the care might be starting to hit its limitations. It depends on the community. So you want to ask very pointed questions about what are your care limitations. The cost for assisted living is based on the accommodation, so whether it's a studio or a 1-bedroom, plus your level of care. And what a level of care means is how much time do I, as a caregiver, spend with you, my resident, to help you with all of any of your activities of daily living. Some communities do it by points, some do it by levels, some people do it by increments of minutes, but what they really are looking at is, how do I staff my community to take care of all of my residents? And if my residents have higher levels of care, I might need more staff to accommodate that. So some look at, in terms of bathing, does a resident need no help with bathing? That might be 0 points. If they need standby assistance, like someone can give themselves a shower, but we're standing by, either in the bathroom or just outside to be there within earshot if someone needs help, that might be like 2 points or 3 points. If someone needs to be helped with the shower, do the back, do the toes and, hard to reach places, that might be a few more points because now the caregiver is interacting more with that level of care, that activity of daily living. And then there are some folks that need to be completely helped with the shower. Help me get undressed, give me a shower, towel me off, lotion me up, and get me dressed. That is a very high level of care. So your points or your care fees for that particular care piece would go up. So now you look at sort of the range, what someone needs help with, and how much does someone need help with? And of those activities of daily living, which ones does someone need help with, right? So it's a little bit of a matrix once you get to assisted living as to what does someone need help with and to what degree, okay? And that will affect your cost. So assisted livings, you would pay a community fee, and then there would be a monthly fee, and that monthly fee would be sort of a base plus your levels of care. And boy, do these range wildly. Yes. Assisted living includes the board and care homes, which are maybe 4 to 8 people with 1, maybe 2 caregivers. They used to be a very low cost option, but they have, because of the cost of staff, things have crept up. And so now they are, $6,000 to $8,000 a month, where they used to be 4 to 5. A community such as Merrill Gardens, the Point at Rockridge, Sunrise, their fees are going to be higher. So, and again, it depends on how many people. Is it both you and your spouse? Is it just one person? What size of accommodation? And what is the care? Someone asked about, what does Medicare cover? Because this is community style living and non-medical, Medicare does not cover anything, okay? If you needed if you needed caregiver assistance and you have long-term care insurance, that's where some of that subsidy would kick in. But Medicare only pays for medical, right? Medical. Specialized memory care, such as Lakeside Park, the Berkshire, where they're only, where the residents all have some form of dementia, can be $12,000 and up. The nice thing is a lot of them, it's all inclusive, right? Because for folks with memory care, one day they might be able to do their shower all by themselves. The next day, not a clue what they're doing. So a lot of times you'll have a more bundled fee structure, and that makes it a little bit easier for budgeting, because we know folks with memory care, it's a continual lowering of abilities. Yeah. So assisted living and memory care, whether they have a memory care as a part of their community or if it's standalone, those are non-medical living. If you run out of money, most of these are most of these are for-profit companies. So if you do exhaust your assets, then they generally do not have a charitable care program. The life plan communities, going back to independent, such as Piedmont Gardens, St. Paul's Towers, we are nonprofits and we do have a charitable function. So if you do outlive your assets, you're financially qualified. If you do outlive your assets, you would stay with us, because that's the benefit of a CCRC or life plan community, as in contrast to assisted living at a for-profit company. Okay. Let's look at the highest level of care, which is skilled nursing. This is absolutely licensed. It's licensed by the Department of Public Health. So all of the staff there have some sort of alphabet after their name. RN, registered nurse, LVN, licensed vocational nurse, NP, let's see. Yeah, so everybody is licensed for nursing and care. So all of those activities of daily living are done by licensed professionals. Are there care limitations? Generally not. This is for folks that need help with mobility. They might need repositioning in bed. Some skilled nursing specialize in trach care. So some skilled nursings do not take care of folks that are on tracheostomy, but they certainly would do any sort of gastro care, oxygen. Yeah, it's pretty much skilled nursing is the highest level of care. It's a complete opposite of independent, right? It's the other end of the spectrum. If you are going to skilled nursing as a result of a hospitalization, Medicare will pay. Starts out at paying 100%, and then over the time that you're there, it's a declining coverage. So your cost of care will, you pay more towards the end of the stay. And Medicare does have guidelines as to how long someone can stay in skilled nursing with their paying. Yes. Where it gets tricky is if someone has maybe dementia and they still have rehab, they still need to rehab. But with their dementia, they can't understand the instructions. And so they've kind of plateaued. Well, Medicare is like, well, we can't pay anymore because they're not improving. So that's where Medicare might bow out paying before the end of their, I think it's 100 days, right? Some people are under the misconception that Medicare pays 100 days no matter what. Medicare pays as long as rehabilitation is occurring. There is the skilled nursing usually quotes a daily rate of $150 to $250 or so. This is all care included. So address all of those ADLs, activities of daily living. Yes. Medication, durable medical equipment, physical, any of the therapies, those are billed separately, right? So if you have occupational therapy or physical therapy, if you need an IV, if you need wound treatment, all of those supplies or professions would be billed separately. So that would be in addition to the daily rate. So skilled nursing can range between $10,000 and $15,000 a month. Some skilled nursings have private rooms, some have shares, and that also affects the price. Okay, so skilled nursing is the highest level of care. So let me just recap a little bit. Independent living is at your home or an independent community. Some independent communities are life plan communities, which cover this whole spectrum. Yes. Assisted living and memory care are licensed. They have care limitations. It is private pay, and they can range from the boarding care sort of group home of 4 to 6 people up to, I think Sunrise maybe has close to 100 people. Specialized memory care is just for folks that have some dementia, cognitive issue, whether it's from a stroke, Alzheimer's. There's sometimes a dementia component with Parkinson's, ALS. It's also memory care is considered assisted living. And then the highest level of care is skilled nursing. And I know that your eyebrows are up here when talking about the cost, and I feel your pain. So hopefully this gives you an idea of where you can plug in as you might consider care options.
Hey, Janet, while you're in a small pause there, I'll just give you a quick time check. Oh, it looks like you.
There we go. How about that?
That was immediate. Very nicely
I
done.
had my little timer on.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you. That was really helpful, Janet, to hear the overview. I have a quick question about the life plan care, the CCRC.
Yeah.
Is it, if you're thinking that that's something that you want to do, it seems that you need to decide early on and get in when you're in independent living. That's where you kind of enter that level of care, right? As independent living.
Yeah. So I will say each community does it a little differently. At St. Paul's Towers, we do ask folks to come in when they are independent. Now, if you have a diagnosis of Parkinson's, or if your spouse has a diagnosis of Parkinson's and you both want to join, then we look at that. So we have two different kinds of contracts, and we would offer you the more fee-for-service contract, but we will admit folks when they are in earlier stages, recent diagnosis, still able to manage fairly independently, yes. Piedmont Gardens has always brought folks in, not only into their independent, but they also bring folks into assisted living and memory care. We do just a very little bit of that because our programs are much smaller than Piedmont Gardens. So if you're looking at a life plan community, you do want to go, you do want to make your decisions earlier. There are also life plan communities such as Via Monte in Walnut Creek and Stone Ridge in Pleasanton, where if you do have a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, early Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, exacerbated heart disease, they actually would not admit those folks with those diagnoses.
Okay, so whether or not you can join one of these communities, and by the way, CCRC stands for Continuing Care Retirement Community, and
Yes.
refers to a type of facility where you can go come in at independent living, and then you can progress through assisted living to memory care if needed.
Yep, and skilled nursing, a life of care. Yeah,
A life of care.
a life of
And so
care.
some of those you said you'll have to put in, what did you call it, an entry fee? Do they
Yes.
all require an entry fee?
They do. And an entry fee, particularly in the nonprofits, would guarantee you that should you outlive your assets, that you stay at the community. But yeah, they all have an entry fee. A lot of times it goes to maintenance or capital costs, things like that.
And is it transferable upon the death? Is it sort of like, is there equity? Do you have equity and you?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are some communities, one particular in the peninsula where you actually buy your unit. And so you are a condo owner. In most of them, you are a renter. So there are different kinds of contracts where you can get back sometimes a portion of your entry fee. So those are, they're all, everybody's a little same and then very different. Yeah.
Okay.
So like at St. Paul's Towers, we have two kinds of contracts and two kinds of refund possibilities for your entry fee.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
If
great.
I may add, as well. So it seems that in the last few years, more and more CCRCs or continuing care retirement communities have opened up their doors to individuals to come in directly to assisted living and memory care, according to their occupancy. And so then in that case, it may be a $5,000 entrance fee or $6,000 or very minimal compared to the large entrance fee. And so you always want to ask if there's a specific community that you like or a specific community that's convenient to you, then you may want to check and see if you can go into assisted living or memory care directly without having had the contract or what have you. So,
And sometimes when folks come in directly to assisted living or memory care, you would be on a month-to-month contract without that guarantee of a lifetime of care, but you're here under our roof. Why would we say no to you first, right? So again, like Veronica said, just ask a lot of questions. All of the sales counselors, or whatever our beautiful names are, really want to make sure that your questions get answered for your specific. So please never feel like, oh gosh, I'm caring for someone with Parkinson's, or I have Parkinson's, I shouldn't give a call. Absolutely give a call, because we really just want to help you find the right place. It might not be with us, but a lot of us have been in the industry for a long time, and we certainly can help you find the right place, or find the right place for now, knowing that you can add services from senior alternatives, silver rides, and kind of patchwork things to make it better.
Great. Thank you so much. That's great. So now we're going to go on to Janelle, and we're going to hear about some of her experience navigating the caregiving journey with her husband and herself. So thank you again, Janet, for that. We'll catch up with you again at the Q&A.
Perfect.
So Janelle, I don't know if you have anything you want to share. You're welcome to use the share screen function at the bottom. If not, it's up to you.
No, I decided that I would pretty much just speak, since this is a personal account of what we've been through. So that's what I'm going to do.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to speak to you about my caregiving experiences and my husband's as a patient, as we've been through quite a number of these different options over the last 5 years. I have hope that this will apply to you in some way, but there are 2 caveats to what I'm going to say. And the first one is, I think we all know that Parkinson's patients are really, really different, one from the other. And that means that what happened to us may not fit your situation at all. And the second caveat is, I'm going to do as well as I can. I'm going to not use the specific name of the different institutions I'm talking about, because I want to say some negative things as well as some positive things. And I don't want PD Active or myself to seem like we're targeting any of these communities, which I actually think many things apply to more than one of these communities. So I'll do my best. You may guess what I'm talking about, and I don't mind talking to people individually about specifics. I'm just going to try to do this for my presentation today. So as an introduction, my husband Jerry and I celebrated our 22nd year together this last month in October. And we've had a rich and active life, and we were just winding down my work life in 2012 when he was first diagnosed with PD. We were living in England at the time, he having retired from the University of the Pacific here in Stockton about 5 years before I started working at University of Warwick in the UK. So we bought a condo in Walnut Creek. We were foreseeing our life together as moving back and forth about 3 months in each place in the course of the year. And we did that for quite a long time. But this was sort of the starting point. I wanted to give you that notion. I would call the first phase of our journey home care 1, although Jerry didn't need much home care those first 5 years. He didn't have tremor. He had cognitive clarity. He had trouble with balance and stiffness and movement, and that has continued to be his major track of difficulty, although now he has cognitive issues as well. So we lived in our condo in Walnut Creek. It was 2-story. It had a sunken living room, and it wasn't much of a problem. He walked a couple of miles every day. It even took some exercise classes. He's quite introverted, and he doesn't like doing group activities. So he hasn't been very active in all of the wonderful classes that he could be doing for PD. That hasn't been his thing. But in these years, he was doing quite well. I would say that he did as much of his own caregiving as I did for him in those years. We really shared it, and we really did quite well. We were able still to travel, I should also add that. By 2017, things were beginning to change. He had decreasing abilities, meaning more trouble with the movement issues. Turning over in bed became more difficult. We bought satin sheets. The kind of balance issues had gotten worse. He was still not walking with a walker, although towards the end of 2017, he got a walker. But he couldn't walk the 2-mile hike trails that he used to do and stuff like that. That was beginning to disappear. And I would say that we still weren't thinking about having to get home health, for example. We were doing fine. And then he also chose to stop driving, because his driving was getting slightly erratic and he was worried about it. I'm glad we didn't have a struggle over that. That was a really good thing. And he began to have trouble with the stairs in the house. And then he took a really bad fall, which ended him in the ER with a big gash and a lot of stitches. Luckily, no head injury, but that was when we began to say to each other, maybe it's time to consider another living situation. And the indicators were the worsening of his condition, and in particular, the fall dangers and the advice we received about how that would get worse. And it was how he could really hurt himself through those falls. So we thought maybe it's time to downsize, and maybe we should look at senior residential living, which takes us into the second phase, which was roughly 2017 to 2019. Yeah. And we thought maybe senior residential living and the independent living part of it would be a good thing, but in a place that was a CCRC, we didn't use that term, so that we could stay there as things changed and got worse. So I looked at a lot of places, primarily in the East Bay. We'd always been fond of the Bay Area, and we had most of our cultural activities and events were in Berkeley or San Francisco, but we figured we couldn't afford San Francisco. He had 2 brothers who live in Mill Valley and in Santa Rosa. So we also looked a bit in Marin at that time, although not too seriously. So we moved into the first senior living situation, which was in the East Bay. It was residential, it was tiered, it was independent living. There was a community fee. This was a new place that had been open about a year. They gave us a deal moving in on, and I'll talk more about costs later. It seemed okay for us at first. We had a 1-bedroom apartment, but it had a small kitchen. I really liked to cook, and I cooked a lot for Jerry, and I didn't want to give that up altogether. But after we'd been there for a while, we began to be less happy, and cost benefit analysis wasn't working out. I was doing most of the meals. We were not eating our full complement in the dining room. We weren't getting any of the healthcare, no medication support or anything. I was doing all of that. We did go to a book club, which was very useful and wonderful. And they had a movie theater and movies every day, and we did that. But basically, we used the concierge. It was good to have somebody on staff 24 hours a day. And a couple of times when Jerry fell and I couldn't lift him, they called the paramedics for the assist in lifting. So that's about all we were doing there. I used the gym, Jerry didn't. And we just felt it wasn't, we decided we could live on our own for half the cost and hire some additional help to make it a little easier for me. So at that point, we moved out. And that means, of course, that we gave up our community fee, but we put down $5,000 as a comeback fee, that we could come back with no additional entry fee if we wanted to, and that becomes germane later. As it turned out, we moved out just ahead of the quarantine, literally the day before the 6 county restrictions were instituted. And our facility actually went into quarantine, and people had to stay in their rooms right after we left. We, of course, didn't know that. We moved into an apartment building. This is now home care 2 in my progression. We moved into an apartment building in Berkeley, and it had 2 bedrooms rather than 1, and it had a wonderful view out of the bay, and we liked it very much, and it was half the price. And taking on the cooking was still not anywhere near the price we were paying. So this seemed great, and we really enjoyed being there. It was close to lots of activities and things, and right kind of in the heart down there by 4th Street. So this worked for us for a while. Eventually, I felt I was getting tired, and this caretaker fatigue is a big thing, and you have to pay attention to it closely. And not just try to do it all yourself, because as my friend said, whose husband was in hospice, if you go down, he goes down. And that was kind of a wake-up call for me. I went, okay, I get it. So I started with home health. I got the agency through asking the other people in PD support groups that I was in, who they used and who they liked. I wanted an agency because we did have CalPERS long-term care, and they wouldn't pay unless it was a licensed agency that you were using. So I was looking for that. And I decided that people who've had positive experiences were my best source of finding out about that. So I started with 3 days a week at 4 hours. You will remember the talk about that being sort of the minimum, the 4-hour shift. And I was trying to just get a little help. And the first caregiver liked to cook, so she helped me with some food prep. I called her my sous chef, and we laughed about that. She did some shopping for me. She helped Jerry to go to the bathroom, and was a reminder on meds and all those things that we've been talking about. Later on, that wasn't enough. I was getting up with him 3 or 4 times a night, which was very exhausting. And anyway, we went to 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. That was too much. It was driving us crazy having somebody in our house that much. Furthermore, the apartment became too small. It was a 2-bedroom, but it was the 2nd bedroom was too small, for example, to have an extra bed in. I needed a study space to have a desk, and that was more important, and I couldn't have both. The other thing we noticed was that as Jerry had to use the walker all the time, maneuvering around the small spaces in the apartment began to be difficult, not undoable, but not as good. And so we thought, okay, we can't stay here comfortably much longer. So at first I was looking for, and also the care, as I say, having a caregiver in that kind of space. It felt worse than I think it would have if we'd had more space. So I started looking for a larger apartment to rent. There were many things that were good about apartment living. We had the elevator, we had a package concierge, we had up on the roof, there was a picnic area with barbecue pits or barbecue gas barbecues, things like that. So we liked that. We liked all of that. And I started just looking for a bigger apartment. But then we had a thought about, well, maybe we should own something again. And we had sold our place in London by this time, as well as the condo in Walnut Creek. So we could think about doing that. And what we did, and we did it in February of 2012. So we're in this year now. Hang on a second. I'm not seeing how much time I've got. Good. Okay. I'm going. So in 2012, we decided that maybe we should diversify our assets, get the advantage of the low interest rates at that time, gamble that the market values were not going to go down that much as things progressed. I figured if we lived in the place for 5 years and had to sell it, we should be fine. My real estate agent said, actually, I think it's more like 2 years. And he gave me a sort of workup on why that might be the case. So we bought a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo in a new building in El Cerrito. And we had one of the bathrooms redone to be a walk-in shower and lots of grab bars and all of that. And this condo had been designed also with the possibility to adapt to wheelchair, although we weren't at the wheelchair stage and still aren't. So it seemed like a good deal. We thought we were moving in there for the rest of life. And this seemed to be okay for a while. We ran into a problem with our caregiver who was there now 5 days a week, but 4 hours a day, and in a couple cases, 6 hours, which was not that he was cross or angry or any of those things that has come up in the questions, but that he was irritating. He talked too much. Part of this was really good. He watched World War II documentaries with Jerry, and he was able to converse at a really good level. But he was self-absorbed and very, very talky. And we felt kind of guilty, like, what do you do about that? Do you raise it with, or, what do I say? We want quiet hours. Anyway, I just want to flag that this is a problem. And a lot of the problem is what you're comfortable with in negotiating the relationship. As it turned out, we kept this person until our whole situation changed. And I'm glad we did, but I don't think we could have continued much longer without making some kind of major change. So all of this seemed very good. We loved the place. And then, and that was March. And then in June, our situation changed because Jerry's changed considerably. And what happened was that his cognitive decline increased tremendously. And he got some impulsive behavior and delusional thinking and acting that we hadn't seen anything like this before. And it manifested by things like running out of the apartment without his walker and down the street, and then of course falling and ending up in the ER. And in the month of June, he was in the ER 3 times in 2 weeks. And I said, oh my, I can't do this. And I was also having trouble. He was needing more transfer assistance. I have a back issue. It was getting worse. And at night, primarily, we're talking about, because the home care person could help during the day, although again, only for a few hours. So there was also significant incontinence, which was that we needed to keep on top of constantly. So the work was beginning to get hard for me to manage, even with help. And then these June incidents were really the last straw. I also fell during one of these incidents on my hip, and that's when I realized we were both hurting ourselves and something had to change, and he probably couldn't stay at home anymore. So with great reluctance, I started looking for a residential facility for Jerry, thinking that I would stay in the condo because we wanted to keep it for financial reasons, at least 2 years. And so everything changed. The first thing I looked for, we're now in July of 2020. And I should also say that Jerry turned 80. I'm 75, so it occurs to me to be useful to you to have some feeling about when this all began to get serious for us. My first thought was to find a small place, a board and care, someplace that would only have a few people and would have really good attention to the needs. My complaints about the other place that we had lived in, the larger place, were not only that what we felt for ourselves, but I observed the care everybody else got. And I really felt like the people in assisted living and memory care didn't have enough staff. They weren't well enough trained. They weren't getting the kind of attention that I wanted Jerry to get. So I didn't want to go back to a place like that. I wanted to try to opt for something different. And also I wanted it to be very close by so I could go every day easily to see him. And that was all fine, but it meant that there were certain things I wasn't taking account of, and I made a couple of big mistakes, and I want to share those. I found a place close by. The managers, the people that I talked to who ran the facility, were really smart and educated about Parkinson's, and they really sounded like they were the right people for him to be with. And there were about 10 people in the facility, and they had about 3 caregivers in the building at a time for those 10 people. Seemed to me like it was going to work out really well. However, one thing immediately, the day he moved in, I started finding I'd made a mistake. One thing I didn't, it looked like a clean facility to me, but there were real cleanliness issues. He shared a bathroom. There was a connecting door between his room and another room. And the first thing on the first day was a dirty urinal. And I went, oh, and then I discovered that the bathroom for guests like me didn't have hot water in the sink, so you couldn't really wash your hands thoroughly. And this also made me just, okay, oh, this isn't, how did I miss this? Why didn't I catch this? And so I passed that on. But beyond that, there were several other issues. One was that all those patients were much more seriously suffering from dementia than Jerry, who was oftentimes quite lucid. And Jerry can't read anymore because he sees double, which for an academic is really hard, as you can imagine. But he does enjoy movies very much, and he enjoys being read to, and he likes to talk about politics. He was a philosophy and a politics scholar, etc. So nobody to talk to. He'd sit at the dinner table and there was no dinner conversation. And also because it's a small place, there was really no social program to speak of, no lectures, no book groups, nothing like that. And very clearly he was just miserable, and I was unhappy with the situation. Level of care was also not good in one way that's hard for me to talk about because my liberal credentials hate saying this, but in fact, the staff did not speak English. And this was a problem because Jerry doesn't speak clearly anymore and doesn't hear well. And so they couldn't understand him and he couldn't understand them. They were largely, their native languages were African. And some of them were very good and very caring, others not, which is the same all over. But the language issue was an issue, and the people who run the place were not always there. So I just felt this was a terrible mistake. And again, how had I missed that? Well, because I talked to the managers, not the actual staff. And I really learned from that to find out about the staff. So I wanted to move him. I was going to lose the entry fee. I didn't care at this point. And I was going to have to pay 30 days. I had to give 30 days notice. So I had double fees for when he moved out. I continued to pay for another month. Expenses were really high. I also had to pay to have him moved, etc. I figure that there's about $45,000 in making a move if you've made a mistake. So it had a financial impact as well. And then it took me a full month to find an appropriate place. And that was really hard. So I was splitting my time between going to see him and take care of him and going to look at other places and other options. And now I had researched board and cares pretty well, but now I was back to looking at bigger places that would have the kind of social programs I felt he needed to sustain his mental health and the cognitive abilities that he had. Okay, that was the month of July was the worst month of my life. For trying to balance those things. It was very, very difficult. I looked at many places. I looked at places in the East Bay, Oakland, Berkeley, Albany, El Cerrito. I looked as far away as Orinda, decided that was too far for me to drive. Pinole, no facility worked for me there. And finally, Marin, where Jerry now is in San Rafael, and I'll come back to that. I felt like the drive to Orinda was going to be too much for me, and I did not want to be in a situation where I couldn't get over there easily to see him. I felt I could drive to Pinole or parts of Oakland or in the end San Rafael. I also, in looking at these big places again, I was looking at memory care and assisted living combinations quite a lot. And I was looking to avoid what we had at the board and care, which was people who couldn't interact with Jerry. And there was a question about where he should be because he wasn't set. He needed to be in a safe, kind of a locked facility. But that often meant memory care, and those people were really not able to interact with him well. So I was trying to find an assisted living situation where he would be secure, but also in a more appropriate setting. And that was very hard to do. And a lot of places, there were some places where he would have to wear an anklet thing on his ankle, and to me it seemed too close to being in jail, and I didn't want to do that either. So I looked and looked and looked and looked, is what I'm saying to you. Some places that I had liked in the past and thought would work wouldn't take him at this, like what we were just talking about. He would have needed to come in earlier on an independent living basis. It was sort of too late in the arc. One of the places that I went early on and that I really liked the way they talked to me, I told them what I didn't like about the first place that we were in for 2 years when we were in independent living. And she said to me, I'm going to tell you 2 things and you can take this with you to any place because we aren't going to be able to have you here. But listen, we are non-for-profit, not for profit. A lot of what you're talking about is the profit motive, how the profit motive drives the services that you get. The second thing is we have a unionized staff. We don't have staff turnover. We have people who've been with us a long time and are really happy. And if you don't have that, you're gonna see these problems. And I have taken that to heart, although he's in neither a not-for-profit nor is he in a unionized shop right now. So, I wasn't able to find that for us. So I did eventually settle. The short list had 3 places. One was the place that we were in originally, because at least at that place, we knew people. He had connections and friendships that were still, those people were still living there. And that we would have gone there, except that they wouldn't take him in assisted living because they didn't have staff, they said, to keep an eye on him. He would have to be in memory care, and in memory care, which is on its own floor, he would not be able to eat in the dining room with his friends, and he would not be able to go to the movie theater. They kept them totally separate. And so that just ruled, that was the end of the line there. We weren't going back. I also learned from our friends there that they had huge staff turnover and memory care was the worst. So I didn't want to go back there. The second place we looked at was a brand new place that was just getting ready to open. And it looked really good, but Jerry was uncomfortable about the fact that there were no other residents for him to see and sort of observe how they were living in the place because it hadn't opened yet. And we couldn't even look at the rooms because they didn't have their license yet with the city to open the facility to show us. And so I was ready to sign up for that place. Jerry wasn't. And I'm really glad we didn't because they are just having their grand opening this month. So in terms of, he wouldn't be, he would be moving in now. And I was, every day that he was in this board and care, I was unhappy, and so was he. So the third place was this one we moved into. Also a new facility. It had had people living in it since March. And this is now, we were looking at him moving in the 1st of August. So he was able to see people living there. Also, they were flexible. We got a deal on the community fee because they were still giving a discount. I believe it was $8,000 to move in. They had all of the different care possibilities. There were independent people living there, which I thought would be good for him to be around, as well as assisted living and memory care. They agreed to let him try assisted living and see if we could make it work. And his doctor, I should say, was supporting that as well. He said he could go either way, whatever the best situation for Jerry he wanted. So we went in assisted living. That only lasted 3 days. And they called me and they said, we can't keep him. He's wandering around without his walker. When Jerry feels pretty good, he will walk across the room without his walker. And he was doing this up in their big dining room. He fell a couple of times. They weren't able to check on him often enough. And they just said he has to go to memory care. I then came to terms with that because I'd been resisting it for all the cognitive reasons. And I realized that in fact, he wasn't going to be, I was going to be really worried about his safety if he wasn't getting more care. So he is in memory care. The problem is the same. There are now 15 or 20 people in his where in his memory care facility, but they aren't people who are at his level of cognitive clarity. In the meantime, he's got a new drug which has killed the impulsive behavior and the wandering behavior. So he's much better there, but he is still falling. He does still walk without his walker when he shouldn't, and he is still at risk. So we're having to come to terms with that, which is kind of a hard thing to do. Jerry has been just really brave about it and is really trying to adjust. I go every day and I stay, and part of that is to keep an eye on the staff. I've got to tell you that there are two kinds of staff. There are the staff who really care about their clients and really do everything they can to take care of them very well. And there are staff for whom it's just a job and they're not well trained and they're not so attentive. And you won't be happy with the care, but you need to adjust to that and do whatever you need to do. I was shocked to find that many people hire companions or additional care in addition to paying, in Jerry's case, $12,400 a month for the facility. I can't do that. I don't have that money. So I take care of him myself, by which I mean keeping an eye on the staff, making sure he gets his meds on time, making sure that everything is done the way it should be. So I'm going to stop talking there. If you have questions for me, I'm also happy to take them offline. I'll put my email in the chat so that I can continue to answer questions if you have them after today's event. Okay. And there's my timer just going off.
Wow, that was impressive, Janelle. You really did stopped right on time.
Yeah, but now I can't stop the timer. Let me mute for a minute.
Okay. We're getting lots of kudos coming in from participants, Janelle, thanking you for sharing your story. And Todd and I also would like to thank you for sharing your story. I know it sounds like it's been a difficult journey for you, and we appreciate your being vulnerable and sharing with us. It's very personal. So thank you. I think
I'm happy to have done it.
Oh,
we all need to learn from each other.
Absolutely. And you have really experienced the gamut. So it's really nice to have you here. And I'm sure we'll have lots of specific questions, but lots of appreciative thoughts coming in on behalf. So one of the things that occurred to me was about your journey was, let's see, how do I want to word this? Incredibly expensive, right? And so, I mean, what would you have done differently if you could have done it all over again? Is there anything that you would have done differently? I know you said that one of the lessons learned was that you would, going into a facility, you would talk to staff, not just management. And I think that was incredibly helpful.
Well, I think there's a number of things I would have done differently. The first thing is I think we probably moved into the first place, the independent living place, prematurely for where we were at. Our independence level was such that we didn't need to be in that facility, and that cost us lots of money that we didn't need to spend, as I found when I moved into the apartment for half the price, and we did just fine. And even when I added then home care, a few hours, a few days a week, it was still much less than that initial thing. So that's one thing, assessing when is the right moment to make the move. I think. Second thing, the mistakes around the board and care. The choosing a board and care, I think, was a mistake, but I didn't know at that time about, I didn't understand the sort of cognitive, I didn't understand that there wouldn't be other people for him to relate to, and that the extreme dementia was going to be a depressing thing to be surrounded by if there were no people who were different, who were at a different stage. So, and also I didn't examine that place well enough. I just talked to the owners, you know, that I missed the cleanliness, for example, was just a big shock to me. And then that I had not caught on to the fact that the staff was largely not English speaking. I could have identified that as a problem because of knowing about Jerry's speech problems. And so that's the second round of mistakes. I think also that having to pay the double, you know, having to move around is like really complicated. Like I'm not altogether happy with where we are now either. Although I think I now have been so many places and also observed so many places that I know that where we are is pretty much as good as it gets, you know? But at the same time, if I were to think about moving him again now, I won't do it because of that overlapping cost of moving out of one place and moving into another, of paying additional community fees, all of that. It's just not viable. So one of the things that I unfortunately think is that if you move in someplace, you want to try to think you're going to stay there. And I didn't really think that way. I thought, you know, if it doesn't suit him, we'll find another place. So those are the main things I would say.
Right. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. It seems like timing is a big question that I think a lot of people have. I know a lot of people on this call have written in and asked about that, about how do you know when to make a move?
I think maybe one thing I would say about that, I think maybe understanding that you might have to is a really good first step for early on when you're thinking, I want to stay at home, I want to stay at home. You have to realize that you may reach a point where it isn't possible, which is what happened to us. If it's a more ambiguous situation, then it's just difficult. I mean, you know, you begin to wear down physically as a caregiver. I had certain signs. I had gained 30 pounds from emotional eating. I had stopped doing exercise, regular exercise. Those two things alone. And eventually my doctor said, you know, your blood sugar is going up. You're going to be pre-diabetic and your cholesterol is going up. So I personally, as a caregiver, had some signals. I didn't want to pay attention to those because I wanted to keep going. And I worked on my resilience and I worked on my character traits rather than my physical traits. And I needed to do both. I took up meditation and mindfulness early on, back here at stage 1. And that has helped and supported me tremendously through these years. But the physical thing is also a part of it. And then for the patient, the amount of struggle that you have with your daily activities is one clue. The amount of pain you're in, the amount of discomfort, how much you are beginning to feel frustrated and exhausted. You just have to listen to yourself. And I don't have a better thing to say than that. If you don't have a clear, like, you know, he fell down, he was in the ER 3 times, those kind of very clear things, then it's much harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't take care of your partner very well if you're not taking care of yourself, right?
That's the bottom line.
Speaking of timing, Monique, I'm hoping that our speakers would be willing to stick around a few extra minutes beyond the 12:30 spot and keep answering questions. Is that okay with you, ladies?
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
Good, then let's say hi to Heather Kennedy, who has a question. She's raised her hand. Heather?
Hi. Thank you so much for this. You have no idea on a personal level. And also after watching my father lift his mother-in-law in and out of the tub for 11 years and cover her with a towel and look away. She was 6 feet tall, and an organist, and just this monumental, graceful being. And he gave her dignity. And then he got sick. And for 15 years, my mother took care of him. The long, slow goodbye of Alzheimer's. And I watched him die in a state-run hospital where the latter of the people you spoke about, the ones who don't care, were taking care of him. And he would fight them when they tried to change him because he didn't know what was going on. Yeah. And it was just this horrible condition. They wouldn't even give him morphine at the end. I had to go pound my fist at the nurse's desk. They said, it's not on his chart. And I said, I don't fucking care. Sorry, excuse my French, but that was one of those moments. So back to all this. Thank goodness we have options.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for educating us and everyone, and for me personally, because I need care soon. There are times when I can't walk or take care of myself, and I'm only 52. This disease is, this disease is kind of like Cupid. It comes when it wants to. It comes barging in at us, only it's not the fun part. But here's what is fun. The fact that we still have quality of life because we have meaning and purpose. I've studied Viktor Frankl lately. We've been talking about this with Rick, and I just had a discussion about this before this. I just want to thank you so much for reminding us there is vitality. And the way that you all presented this, it wasn't a downer. I cried when I heard about your story with your husband, Janelle. But at the same time, I feel uplifted and inspired. Thank you so much for this. I'm a huge fan of all of you. Hope to see you again.
Thanks, Heather.
You are such a graceful being, Heather. Thank you.
She is. She's a big advocate in the PD space with a bunch of the big organizations out there. Heather's been on our roundtable discussions in the past. So thanks for joining in, Heather. Okay, I want to make sure I have a ton of my own questions for all three of you, and I want to make sure that our attendees are also getting recognized. So if anybody has any questions that you haven't yet put into the chat, if you'd like to go ahead and take yourself off mute now, go for it, or raise your hand using the Zoom hand raising feature, and you will be sort of lifted to the front of the queue when it comes to these thumbnail images. So
I did want to interject another resource, particularly because Janelle explained how she was researching this place and then this place and this place. And I don't know, it sounded like you felt very much on your own trying to find. And I will say for folks that need care, it very much is an oval peg in a round hole. There's not a perfect place, and even being at home is not always a perfect place. It just isn't. So there's a category of business called referral or placement agent. And these are folks who, and Veronica, you guys do this too, right? The placement special? Yeah.
To a certain extent we do for our clients,
Okay.
but yes.
So there's a category of business in our world called placement specialist or referral specialist. And these are folks who know all of the different communities and all of the who's got availability. They know the current reputation, because things change, right? Janelle found that
And leadership.
change.
Yeah.
Leadership changes, staff changes, philosophy changes, regulations change. So these folks, you do not pay for their services, but they have a contract with agents, with communities that they work with, and they will receive a fee for representing and if you choose a community that they represent you to. There are public agencies like A Place for Mom. The good news is that they have a huge database all over. The downside is that they don't have personal knowledge of these communities. There are other organizations, and I'm going to toot this horn because we love them, right, Veronica? CareQuest.
That's correct.
Ladies.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly who I was going to recommend. Yes.
They are my default go-to for 20 some years. CareQuest, and we'll get their information. But Julianne Bigelow concentrates on Contra Costa County, and Helen Lindberg, concentrates on Alameda County. What I love about them is that they will recommend a community to you, even if they're not going to receive a fee. They have that much integrity. They'd be like, you know what? I don't have a contract with these people. I don't work with them, but here's the right place for you.
I did try. I should say I did, in fact, use two of those organizations. And the first place sent me 3 recommendations right away in my area, but none of those 3 places looked even possible to me. And so I decided they weren't recommending at a level that I wanted. And the second place was the one that ends in mom. I tried them.
A Place for Mom.
Yeah, but exactly as you say, they were kind of too remote. They were also slow, and I needed I needed help fast. So, yeah.
So anyway, so there are agencies that can help you with, they do the groundwork for you. They can go with you to your appointments. Anyway, I highly recommend CareQuest. So
And what are those type of organizations called? You call them referrals
yeah,
services?
they're called either referral agency or placement agency.
Placement agencies.
Yeah.
And what about hiring, caregivers through an agency versus hiring them on your own, independent ones? Do you have any thoughts, especially maybe Veronica, on the difference? I guess you have,
Yes.
yeah.
So, when you hire a caregiver on your own, of course, this is a person that's dedicated to you and you only, they're available only to you. And those are the pros of that, right? You get to know this person, they become sort of part of your family now because they're really dedicated to your care, which is wonderful. And so then it's who replaces them when they need replacement. So that's the con, which is if they have to go on vacation, if they're ill, if something happens in their life, then who's going to replace them? And that's where an agency comes into play. So if you think of agencies, then typically it's just a phone call. Yes, they're going to assign a person to you, but if for some reason that person has a car issue or a family issue, or they're not feeling well, or now with COVID, if somebody, again, becomes infected with COVID, then now that person's out of commission. So then what do you do? So, it would be just a phone call. And even I see it in our agency, a caregiver calls us first before they can't make an appointment. And they'll say, this is happening right now. I can't get to my appointment. So then we quickly find someone else within minutes to be able to replace that person so that our client doesn't go without even an hour. So that's the beauty of having an agency and an organization behind that caregiving team, because then they can pivot really quickly and be able to support that individual right away. So
I would also like to say that if you're if you or your person is living in a community that is licensed, they have guidelines about who can be a caregiver. And sometimes they require, because of their requirements, risk averse, they require that your care person come from an agency. In particular, if you're counting on the caregiver to provide 4 hours of care, then they've scheduled their staff to not really be pointed towards your family member, right? Because they know this caregiver is coming. If they come from an agency, like Veronica said, person A can't come, they send person B. So a lot of times communities will require you to have a caregiver from an agency. They're also background checked and TB screened. And so they already have these parameters that they can just walk into the community and start working.
Great, that's super helpful. We have a question from our comment and question from somebody in the audience, is that how does one prepare for options assuming perhaps both in a marriage or relationship develop memory issues simultaneously and have no children or family to help out? And I think a similar question would be that we had from a person in the community who wrote in to say, what if you're on your own? What if you don't have any family to help care for you? And you're sort of trying to navigate this on your own. Does anybody have any thoughts to share on that topic?
Yes,
Sure.
I guess I do, because while that isn't our situation, I certainly know many people who are in that situation. You need to have, and people urge you to have anyway, durable power of attorney for healthcare, and also a durable power of attorney for financial care. This is where pre-planning is really essential. And actually, Jerry and I started thinking about this a long time ago when we made a living trust with our kids and stuff to sort of set this up. Usually, if you don't have family, you do have one or two close friends, hopefully who are younger than you, which is an issue as we all get older and our friendship base gets older too. You must find somebody who you trust to make some of these decisions for you if you are incapacitated, if you're by yourself, and if you don't have family that you can trust, or friends that and so it may not be a real close friend. It might be a lawyer who does some work for you, or another professional person who you work with, who you feel that you can trust. And if you are worried about the both of you, an important thing, I mean, Jerry and I tried to do this, looking at these places where you can move in together at an earlier stage while you're both still corpus mentis, knowing that you can stay, gives you a couple's togetherness that will matter to you. Now, one thing we found was that we could not, in one of these places we were looking at that we wanted to go to, I would have had to be, we couldn't be together. I would have had an apartment in another part of the facility, and he would be in memory care. And I think that that's not uncommon, but it's important to ask about that if you're looking to try to find a place where you can be together. The ideal thing would be that you were in independent living and he was in memory care, but you were in one apartment. But I don't, at the moment, know any places like that.
So their only real chance of probably being together would be if you were both in independent living, I would imagine, going initially.
Well, what do our other guests, speakers think? Because they may know some places I don't know. I mean,
at St. Paul's Towers, if a couple comes in together, there's a wider range of there's a wider opportunity for people to be together, because the spouse does some of the care, at least in terms of, listening for at night or that overnight care. We also have a drop-in like day programming that if the spouse has dementia and you need a break, you can schedule time for you to drop them off in the memory care for the morning or the afternoon. And so they have that socialization. And in assisted living, a lot of times, one spouse goes, it seems like one spouse is early and one spouse is either on time or late to join the party, if you will. It's very difficult. I did hear of a gentleman who moved in with his wife to Lakeside Park, which was an all memory community, because he was there all day, every day. And so he moved in, they shared a private room together. And when she passed, he stayed on because he had just knit community. He had friends, he had relationships. Did he have dementia? Nope, not at all. But he had moved to stay with his wife and then stayed on and had a lovely life without dementia, but in a dementia community. So and for folks that are solo agers or single people, you have to start planning early. And that's where community sort of helps you more, because you don't have to rely on your friends to come and help you with the shower, or always impose on them to take you shopping. You can have more of a social relationship either with your spouse or with your friends if you are in a community setting or having in-home care that can help you with those more ADL personal care items. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Veronica, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so, to the point of care management, and, when you're referring to folks that don't have family, or that maybe, they're seeing signs of dementia in themselves and their spouse, and they don't have children. Yes, that's where care management comes into play. And so there are many agencies out there that do that. Yes, it's absolutely great to have a power of attorney or someone who's a friend. It can be your healthcare power of attorney and so forth, but you may still need another entity, another person to support in the care piece, right? And so that's where care management comes into play. And so there are different organizations like, Jewish Family and Children's Services, for instance, is one, that is out there. And I can put some up on the chat as well when I'm done with this. But yeah, so care management is exactly that, is a person that's going to be a fiduciary. It's a person that, is again, the agency would have a good reputation. There are other professionals that would recommend care management agencies out there. And so that's what you want to look for as part of your planning is, to choose an agency that can do that and come into play when needed, knowing what your, again, preferences are and what your likes and dislikes. And, you have to have some kind of document that talks about that when it comes time to make a change, to add help, or to move to a community. So fiduciaries are great for that.
Mhm.
And then also care management agents.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It looks like Tina has her hand up. So Tina, we would like to give you a chance to ask your question. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, I just want to thank you for this conference. It's been so informational for me. And Janelle, thank you so much for sharing your experience, because you share a lot of, advice, and I learned a lot from you. And you're so inspirational because you're so dedicated to Jerry. I take care of my sister. So sometimes I feel like I don't prioritize my time. So finding a caregiver for her, I feel like sometimes I don't have the time, but I think that's one of the most important things I need to do. One of the questions I have, I've checked some agencies, and some of them said because due to the COVID, they don't really have caregivers. And then another agency I checked, they mentioned that, the 4 hours minimum, but then they may not necessarily have the same people coming. So that is a little bit of an issue for me. But one of the questions I have is, how, I have to get an employer number to hire independent caregivers. And I don't know how to do that. And my accountant said recently he decided, he's not going to do W-2 forms for the workers, because he has gone e-filing. So my question is, how do I go about, filing when I do hire the independent caregivers? How do I file? Who do I ask to file the W-2 forms for that I need to do?
I don't have an answer to that, but I can ask my executive director what the best way would be to do it, and see how, us as an organization, as a corporation, how we do it. And then maybe she has an answer for you. So if you would like to put your email address on the chat, I'll be happy to ask her and then follow up with you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
When we hired caregivers for my mom, we used a payroll service that just we would upload our information, like their hours, and they would actually cut a real paycheck and hold back taxes, and then they would issue the W-2s, because we wanted to do everything on the up and up. So the direct hires, a lot of folks are paid just kind of cash. But if you want to do it, particularly if you want to do it for reimbursement through your long-term care insurance, then they do need to be documented workers. So yeah, with W-2s.
Which one did you hire to do?
I don't remember. It was a very long time ago.
That's okay.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of using an agency, Tina, is that they deal with all of that for you. So you pay the fee that you pay is not only part of it goes to the worker as their hourly wage, but then it also pays for the overhead for services for payroll and all of that, and the tax reporting.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And Tina and others, if you'd like to share your email address with the ladies, you can do that directly to them as opposed to sharing it with the whole group for confidentiality. You use that little drop down list in the chat, at the bottom of the chat window, you can select the name of the recipient.
Okay, thank you.
So So I think we're going to wrap up. I just wanted to remind everybody of a few quick things. One is that we are compiling resources, and we will send out something to everybody that attended the presentation. The recording will be available on our website in a few days. So check back there, and we'll also send that in an email. And I also wanted to let everybody know that you can save the chat. So at the bottom of the chat, there's like 3 little dots. And if you click on that, there's a function called Save Chat. So if you wanted to save the chat, you can do that. But we will we'll compile all the resources. So if you have any other resources that you want to share, now would be a great time to throw them in the chat, and we'll include them on our list that we're going to send out. So that would be great. I also wanted to let everybody know that I put 2 things in the chat just now. One is the link to a Stanford group. They have a caregiving corner at Stanford, which is incredible. They have tons of resources. I'd highly encourage you, if you're not, to get on one of their mailing lists. They curate webinars from all over the country on caregiving. So any given week, there's 2 or 3 wonderful webinars going on. That's through the Stanford group. And then I also posted in the chat a link to a Parkinson's group. It's sort of Parkinson's month this month, and they're posting a ton of resources on their website about caregiving. So please definitely check those out. Anything else, Todd, that you'd like to say?
So many questions have come in. This is a very important and meaningful and high demand topic for a lot of us out there. So I so wish we could have gotten to all of these questions. I do hope that the resource sheet that we provide in the next day or so will help to answer questions we have not been able to field. We do really appreciate you guys attending. This has been a pretty, big roundtable for us, over 100 registrants and 75 or so attendees at any given time during the past 2 hours, and we went long. So personal thanks to the 3 panelists, Janelle, Janet, and Veronica. Thank you very much for spending part of your Saturday with us.
Welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. And anytime.
Pleasure.
Yeah. All right.
Are we done?
I think so.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thanks very much for attending, and we'll be in touch following up with more information.
Take good care.
Thank you
Bye.
for bringing it together.
Have a good weekend.
Take care. You too.